Okay, people. I think I'm live. So, the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm finally going to start telling my story. I know I look rough. It's not about how I look, but I want to tell my story about how I got here to Colorado from my accident, how it all happened. I'm going to be telling my story only. I'm going to mention some people. I'm going to try to use different names because I don't want their names to be out there. I don't know if they want people knowing what they did or did not do. So, but again, I'm here to tell my story, to help people, to let people know you don't always have to live in the hood. You could leave the hood. You could do something better with your life. Um, and yeah, mainly to help people and to get my story out there. I'm gonna try to tell us a piece of it every day. I want to start from when I got injured to when I got here, and that's probably gonna be my story of me laying on the ground. I was 13 years old. Um, don't want to get into details of how I got there, but long story short, laying on the ground fighting for my life. And what's weird about that situation is 2 weeks prior, um, I've always believed in God, and I had a talk with God 2 weeks before that because if you knew what I was doing in my life, it was pretty bad. And there was a lot of gangs where I'm from. And to those who say you have a choice to join a gang or not join a gang, I would love to see if those people were actually from the hood who said that. Because where I'm from, you really don't have a choice. If you don't join the gang, you get picked on, you get bullied. Um, if you could deal with that and handle that, all power to you. But if you don't want to deal with that, then it's one or the other. Join a group of people who you think will have your back, or deal with all the nonsense that comes with not being a part of nobody and nothing. I unfortunately took the easy route. I started hanging around guys who were a part of the gang, and they did seem to act like they cared for me, and I cared for them, but it wasn't all what it was meant to be, you know. So I had got injured when I was 13, and all the guys who I thought would have my back, none of them were around. I had people come visit me in the hospital, but it was once every, I can't even think about it. Let's just say when I first got injured, I was in the hospital from January to June. I only seen maybe 5 to 10 friends, and out of a span of 6 months, twice, twice they came to visit me. So I knew then that the gang life wasn't all what it was meant to be. And my family didn't know. I think they didn't know I was in or around the gang, affiliated and stuff like that. Even though my mom would always teach me that gangs were a lie, they were stupid. I never believed her. I did my own thing. I thought these guys would have my back, but like I said, when I got injured, I realized the only people who really have your back are your family. And unless you really are blessed with some great friends who prove themselves, and all power to you, to your friends, don't lose them. It's hard to find. Be loyal to one another, because again, like I said, it's hard to find. But if you don't have that and you have a good family, your family is who you need to trust, who you need to build that foundation with, because you only get one family. You could always find a group of friends who think you have your back, and then you could form whatever, but you only have one family. So if you have an amazing family, please stick with your family and know that your family have your back more than anybody in this world, and don't ever turn your back on family. That's one thing I'm grateful that my mom taught us. I have a brother. I have two brothers. One brother I really do not know. I wish I did. That's another story. My dad, went and got another woman pregnant. So I do have a little brother, but I really don't know too much about him. So I have a brother with my mom and my dad. Um, and it was hard for him when I first got injured. And I'm very grateful that my mom learned how to take care of me the best way she could. And that's where I'm going to try to start my story. So I want to start my story from when I was laying on the ground. So like I said, I've always believed in God. And 2 weeks before my accident, if you guys knew the things I was doing in life and the people I was around, I was living a fast life and I knew it. I was 12, 13, doing things that grown up men were doing. You know, I had money in my pocket, not a lot, but money. I had weed. I was sleeping around already, even though I was a child and I knew it was wrong. But, you know, I was just doing what was around me, what was presented to me. And so my story begins to me when I was 13. I was laying on the ground. I had a gunshot to my neck. And I remember looking up at the sky and seeing the snow fall. It was during a 3-day blizzard. And when I was lying there, I thought that was it, you know, because if you knew what I was doing, the person I wasn't a good person. And I knew that. And I had a talk with God 2 weeks prior before my accident because I knew what I was doing was wrong. And I knew I couldn't stop myself because I just know myself. So I asked God and I begged God because I always believed in him and I don't want to go to hell and I know I couldn't handle jail. So I begged him to slow me down so that way I could become closer to him, to know him. And what's weird is 2 weeks later, I end up on the ground fighting for my life. And I felt like it was what I asked him for. So when I realized that, I accepted it. I said, God, I had this talk with you 2 weeks ago. I think this is your way of teaching me. I thought he was going to, take my life. So I begged for him to let me inside of his, heaven. So I said, God, please let me in. Please let me in. I don't want to go to hell. And I know what I've been doing is wrong. And that's why I'm laying here. And I understand and I accept it. Right when I had that thought process, I heard the ambulance. And I never thought that I would get a second chance. But when I heard the ambulance, I said, or you can let me live, it's up to you. And I'll never forget because it broke my heart. I had this coach who lived in the alley of me, and he always wanted to get me into baseball. From 8 years old, from what I remember, I would always go throw out the trash. And if you would be throwing out the trash or whatever, he'll be right there. And he would always ask, you want to join baseball? You ever play baseball? And I wasn't interested. But finally, I think I was 9 or 10 when I finally decided to join. And I started playing baseball, and I was really good at it, and it was really fun. And he explained to me one day, I was in the truck with him, and he goes, I've been living in the back of you for a while, and I know what type of person you are, and I didn't want you to join the wrong way. So that's why I wanted you to play baseball. And that's another thing. You never know who's watching and who cares for you and who's looking out for you and who has you in their thoughts. Because, man, it was a great year playing baseball that year. But the next year, I didn't want to play baseball as much. I wanted to be in the streets like a dummy. So, and it broke his heart because he would always try to get me to go to the games, the practices. And I would only show up to the games because I was a really good player. So to me, I didn't really need practice. Anyways, what broke my heart is he was I forgot what they're called, ambulance dispatcher. So as I was laying there fighting for my life, thinking that God is going to take me, to slow me down or to allow me into his kingdom. I don't know if I was going to his kingdom, especially what I was doing that night. But, I was praying like, oh, man, please forgive me. Please forgive me. I don't want to go to hell. And I know what I was just doing is wrong. But like I said, when the ambulance showed up, I'll never forget because my coach was the first person I saw. And it broke my heart because he was trying to keep me from that. And now that's the first person I'm seeing is my coach. And to make it even more worse, a couple of weeks prior to that, I got into it I was a bad kid in school, class clown, bad, just bad. My mom didn't know that, because I only got suspended twice a year. I didn't get suspended more than that because I didn't want her knowing who I truly was because I was terrified of my mom and I loved and respected her. And I did not want to lose her respect. And something told me, if you get suspended twice, that's it. Don't get suspended more. Don't let her know who you are. Don't show her your gangbanging ways. I loved and respected my mom so much. I never wanted to lose her respect. So 2 weeks prior to that, my bad, I suck at keeping long story short. That's why I'm doing this on YouTube. And I pray that, like I said, I can help people, and if I can help people, that's helping myself along the way. Um, 2 weeks prior to that, or whatever, sometime prior to this situation, I got into it with a little girl. I said something very inappropriate. I hope she forgives me, and I hope he forgives me if they remember what it was. And they had to call our parents, and I remember he looked at me and he told me don't ever talk to his daughter like that way, don't disrespect her, which is understandable. Um, and I remember like an idiot, I tried to be tough, thinking I would never need this man, and what was weird is I didn't know he was a paramedic. That's what they call paramedics. So when I was laying on the sidewalk fighting for my life, and my coach was the first person I saw, and I wanted to cry or feel bad, I don't know, even though I'm fighting for my life. The second person I saw was that paramedic, the same man that I got into it with prior with his daughter. And I was like, oh, you're going to die. This man is going to see you and be like, here's the opportunity. But I guess parents don't hold grudges when it comes to kids, and especially if they see their kid. Of course, he didn't see his daughter in me, but he saw his daughter's classmate, I believe, because as soon as I wanted, to tell my coach, like, get him off, or try to explain to my coach who this man is, the man comes up to me, just like how my coach came up to me and said, we got you, don't worry, we got you, we're going to get you safe, we're going to do what we got to do. And I remember they cut open my sweater because they didn't know where I was injured, and I'll never forget. I remember just running and all of a sudden spinning around, didn't hear the gunshot, didn't feel the gunshot. I just remember, I guess when it hit me, I spun, I fell to the ground, and like I said, I just saw the snowfall, just all this snow falling on me. And like I said, I was just looking at the sky, watching all the snowfall, and I started praying and saying, please allow me, and da-da, and all this. And like I said, that's when all this stuff happened. And I always thought that I was flown to the hospital, which makes sense. And I'm going to leave it at this because I don't want to go too far. I don't want to lose people, talking too much. So I'm going to try to do 10 to 15, 20 minutes the most every day. And I'm going to go from point A to point Z. I may go other places because how my brain works, and I suck at, sticking. So I pray people watch, and I pray people keep me on point. So I thought I was flown. My whole life, I thought I was flown to the hospital because where I'm from, East Chicago, Indiana, they don't have a lot of big hospitals. So if you need to go to somewhere to get work done, if you get injured in Indiana, from what I know, if you're not at these in certain areas, they will fly you to somewhere you need to be. And the nearest place where I needed to be flown was Chicago, I guess. So that's why I always thought I was flown there, especially with a bullet hole in my neck. I didn't find out until I was 18 years old that I was driven all the way from where I was injured to the hospital, Loyola University. And where I'm from to Loyola University on a good day is about 45 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. On a bad day, it could be about an hour and a half, let alone a blizzard. So that's why I really think it's meant for me to be here, because I survived with a gunshot wound to the neck all the way from where I'm from to Loyola Hospital. And if the story is true of what my mom told me, my mom was in shock from what she told me. So, and people get shot all the time where I'm from. So she just thought, oh, my son's shot, he'll be okay. He's going to get out. We're going to go home, this and that. She was in shock. My grandparents were trying to explain to her, no, he's shot. I think they knew the severity. I think they knew where I was injured at. And she just kept saying, like, no, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. She was in shock. So from what she told me, she ended up getting there at the same time I got there. My grandpa drove her, and my grandma was in the ambulance with me. So as she was in shock and she got to Loyola, as soon as she got in there, I guess they were rolling somebody out and saying cold blue, cold blue. And she realized when she looked that it was me. that they were rolling out saying cold blue, cold blue. And, that's when the nurses came up to her and explained to her, you need to prepare for the worst. And then that's when everything started to hit her. That's when she realized, like, oh, wait a minute, my son is shot. I could lose him today. And that's when my grandparents were like, yes, like, where have you been? But that's when my mom told me something that I'll never forget. And it's the same story of when I was born. So when I was born, like I said, I'm going to try to stick with, but bear with me. So when I was born, I was the first child my mom held. My mom had 3 kids before me. My oldest brother, who passed away when he was 5 hours old, from what I was told. I think he swallowed some type of fluid, and it went to his brain. So he died when he was 5 hours old, if I'm not mistaken. But my mom still held him, if I'm not mistaken, and everybody told her not to, but she did. She held my baby brother, her first son, when she was 15. That's another story. That's her story. But I'm just trying to give you some details of my mom and me and how we became so close. So, and when my brother, he did the same thing, if I'm not mistaken, but my mom was with my dad at the time, and my dad had very good insurance. So my mom had this big room. She had all these nurses around her, so she was being monitored. So when it happened with my brother, they were able to catch it right away. They made her do a C-section. They got him out. They put him in an incubator or something. They had to take him to ICU to drain the fluid from his head. And so my mom wasn't able to see my oldest brother either for 2 weeks. So my story is a little different because when I was born, I'm not experimental, no disrespect to my oldest brother. May God be with him. I hope he's in heaven. No disrespect to my other brother. He's just bad, period. That's what my mom joked and said. Me, I'm not bad. Or I'm bad, but I'm not experimental, I pretty know, I know myself to know that I was probably in the womb. Like, I'm just going to do what I need to do here. I'm not going to swallow nothing, let's get me out. So when I was born, I didn't swallow no fluid. I didn't do nothing. So when my mom woke up, she said she heard a baby screaming and screaming and screaming, which makes a lot of sense because I've always been a mama's boy. And I guess I've been a mama's boy since birth because I was screaming, screaming, screaming. My mom said she woke up and just heard this screaming, 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 screaming. And when she finally, became aware, she's asking the doctors and nurses, who's doing all that screaming? And that's when they explained to her, your son. We don't know what's wrong with him. He's fine. We checked everything. He just won't stop screaming. He just won't stop crying. We don't know why. As for my mom, still high off of the epidural, she asked him, like, well, let me hold him. And they were like, oh, we don't think that's a good idea. You still have the anesthesia in you from the epidural or whatever, And that's when my mom was like, I could hold my son. Give me my son. And mind you, this is her first time holding a son that, wasn't gonna go anywhere. So, no disrespect to my older brother or my oldest brother. I wish she was able to hold them, correctly and properly the way she wanted to. Probably, she's a strong woman. My mom and her story. Ooh, that's another story for another day. So, anyways, so me crying, which makes sense because I'm a crybaby. I'm sensitive, and I've always been a mama's boy, apparently. So I'm crying, screaming, and finally they, decided to give me to my mom. My mom says as soon as they put me in her arms, I stopped crying, which makes sense. And as soon as I stopped crying, she starts joking and talking like, why are you crying? Are you the one that just got cut open? Did they just pull a baby out of you? Did you just go through what I went through? I don't understand. Like, you're screaming like you're the one who just gave birth. Like, what's the situation? And she said, as soon as I heard her voice, I stopped crying. And then I stopped crying and I opened my eyes, and she said she'll never forget that she saw beautiful brown eyes. So she always called me her beautiful brown eyes. And so, I guess when everything, hit her while I was at the hospital being pulled in for the cold blue, and my grandparents were explaining to her that she might have to prepare for it. That's when my mom told them and told me what she told them, and I'll never forget. And I'm like, yo, what if it is the power of prayer or a mom? You never know. My mom looked at my grandparents and said, my son isn't going nowhere. And that's when my mom told my grandma and grandpa, God will never take my beautiful brown eyes from me. And they were like, what makes you say that? And that's what my mom says, because I couldn't live without him. And God knows I can't live without my son, my beautiful brown eyes, my heart. So he's not taking them from me. And sure enough, I'm still here. So that's part one. I'm going to end the stream. I'm going to explain or put this out. I hope people start sharing it, and I hope people start listening to my story. That is part one for now. There's going to be a lot of parts because, like I said, I got injured when I was 13, and I did not move to Colorado until I was 18. And I want to give the full story again to help people, to motivate people, to let people know if you're in a chair, it doesn't matter. If you have the right people around you, you could always do something. So never give up on yourself. Always believe in yourself. Always believe in the higher power, and you'll be good to go.